I am Andy Burkowski for VGS, Video Game Sophistry, and this week on Dialogue Wheel, I wanted to talk a little bit about the confirmation of E3 being canceled this year, one of the first times that's happened in a very long time. If you're watching this online, surprise, you get to see a face of mine. That's not something us radio folks do normally, but I thought maybe this human connection might be valuable. If not, I will scrap it immediately because that is how content creation works. As soon as someone doesn't like it, you completely forget any of your morals or beliefs and do it this. Anyways, I'm talking about E3. So it was announced today and confirmed that the Electronic Expo that's in LA every year, that is so ubiquitous with gaming, is canceled for 2020, specifically citing the coronavirus and the massive pandemic-like infection rate that is now kind of bracing the entire world. News today from the Entertainment Software Association, directly word for word. After careful consultation with our member companies regarding the health and safety of everyone in our industry, our fans, our employees, our exhibitors, and our longtime E3 partners, we have made the difficult decision to cancel E3 2020, scheduled for June 9th to the 11th in LA. This isn't quite like GDC, which they said originally, will not be canceled, but will be postponed. This one is not going to happen. It was also added, though, in this press release that in June, they are going to coordinate an online experience. Whatever that means should be interesting. We don't know if it's going to be like the Nintendo Directs that have been going on for years now. But it is sort of an unprecedented moment because for as long as most of us can remember, E3 was representative of sort of the pinnacle of video game culture. It was something that if you were a video game journalist, you would fight tooth and nail for the opportunity to be there. It was something that if you were an adolescent who played video games, I remember, the G4 Tech TV days where you'd want to see every day and catch the coverage and, be on the show floor there. It represented a bit of legitimacy for an industry that is so often maligned by people who don't see it as important or impactful as maybe movies or even recently comic books or music. So it had this place, and it was really important for a really, really long time. Now in 2020, I question that importance of E3 as a cultural touchstone, and I would even suggest that maybe we need to do away with it altogether, even though it was so important and informative for the creation of this culture of video games. I think that this could be a very, very good decision to not only get rid of it here, but really to ensure that moving forward, what we know as E3 really changes. So the stuff that we can speculate on so far is what many of the major publishers are going to do. It was reported by Kotaku that Warner Brothers actually had a plan to do a whole stage show, which is very interesting considering over the years, more and more publishers and developers have shied away from that and didn't want the spectacle and the cost of that. So they have some pretty big games that they wanted to showcase. Ubisoft, Xbox so far have announced that they are going to do something, whatever that is. It will happen in June, and I think practically what will happen will be very similar to that. I think we'll get something close to the Directs. I think publishers like Ubisoft, like Sony, like Microsoft will do Directs as well, and then maybe extend this in another big and exciting way. For a lot of people, the travel, the access to a trade show like this are almost impossible. When I went to E3 a handful of times, I was representing a radio station, so really old media. And at that time, I remember meeting with the guy who's like, oh yeah, I'm here for Twitch. Have you ever heard of it? The changing media landscape even 5, 6, 7 years ago was at such an infancy. And now what we have seen of the E3 of 5 or 6 years ago is such a relic because it doesn't have that access. I would argue that a lot of people who love, experience, and want to learn more about video games every day do so through non-traditional means. It's not through radio. Jesus Christ. It's not through even necessarily magazines or websites. I think it has a lot to do with these sort of connections now, the people that you have parasocial relationships with and trust. And for a long time, that segment of the video game industry was not given the same credence as, rinky-dink journalists, which I think I've been on both sides of that, who get access because they represent a 50-year-old newspaper, then maybe 20 people will see that story. So I think if everything does switch, where we go away from the big box, traditional old media way of presenting this art form, I think it will open it up to a lot more people if it's done online. I think that something that we're missing here from a lot of the coverage is the idea of the sanctity of this sort of event for journalists. There is that, I would say, unfair idea that because you're a video game journalist, you're given some kind of prestige, or there is something that is open to you. That's the hierarchy, that comes with any sort of job that is in journalism. The more we can move away from that, I think it puts us in a much better position to not have people who gatekeep our industry and this the great culture that is behind it. Video games are in a really excellent position to go away and move away from traditional media. No longer do we have to kind of preen and hope that video games will be considered the same sort of cultural relevance as movies and as music. There is a strong enough economic fan base and player base to establish that this is its own thing. Why then would we try to have the similar staples from old media that didn't work for us? Think of something like the Oscars. When I first started really talking about video games in a more critical sense, the idea of having an Oscars for it was deeply important. Over the last 10 years, we have had something that's been an equivalency, that's tried to reach that same level of prestige and kind of gala impression because it needs to be in a big stage, spending a lot of money. I don't know about you, but from what I've seen of the Video Game Awards, it is about 97% really, really difficult to discern commercials and really cringy, unfortunate ways that the pure commodification of everything is presented to us. It's not the same. It's never going to be the same. And that's a good thing. And the loss of E3 now, of it being canceled today, which also I didn't touch on, but is absolutely legitimate for the concerns of what coronavirus is and the replication rate and the possible fatality rate of that. Every major outbreak that's happened in major metropolitan cities in North America has had to do because of conferences like this, whether it is CPAC or in Boston, the Biogel, I think it was, wherever you pronounce that major conference. It was people that don't normally meet each other hitting at vectors that don't normally happen. And this is serious. This is affecting our world in a big, big way. And that's why I also think that we now have to be ready for this in 2020 as an industry. We cannot be crippled by disasters and pandemics and natural disasters to no longer be able to create and present these works that people work so hard on. Because unfortunately, as this world continues to rot and we lack the economic certitude to get through these times, this will continue. This will not be the first conference, or the last conference, that's canceled due to a pandemic. This will not be the last time that we had to have a major tectonic shift in how we see the culture of video games. But honestly, I have no real qualms of stripping myself of what this old industry used to represent. The glitz and glamour of what these events once were has no sway over me. The how it focuses as a trade show is important, but I think that's also people living with old world tendencies. You don't need to network and share your business in this sort of way when there's so many other really easy and technologically advanced opportunities to do that. This is the video game industry, for Christ's sake. We're not trying to, sell vacuum cleaners to each other or go to a trade show about, what's the next little gadget. This is about getting people together who make these products and can publish it, which can be done in different spaces. This is about showcasing works that multi-billion-dollar corporations have spent years making, which absolutely can be done and should be done without a brick and mortar place. And I think ultimately, if you put all these ideas together, it is about streamlining to differentiate this industry from others, because we don't have as much of the baggage of something like the movie industry, where they cling to this idea that unfortunately we need to have the glitz and glamour. There needs to be this big brick and mortar showing. Video games don't need that. We haven't had it before. It's only been a small instance of us even trying to do something like this. And I, for one, I'm pretty excited about the opportunity to have more people have more access to these sort of major showings that normally wouldn't, because, they can't get to E3, or they're unable to be considered the same sort of traditional media outlets that other ones are. Ultimately, though, this is a question of cultural impact and the effects on our industry. Does the cancellation of E3 2020 mean that E3 2021 will no longer be? I think there are far too many economic interests in play here for that to happen. I earnestly believe that it should. I think that we, like I said, have moved forward in this medium to a place that can expand and do better, and doesn't need to cling to the strictures of the past. I want to see all of these games as much as anyone else, but I think for most people who experience E3, they're going to see it and experience it the same way as they would if they were there. The loss of networking contacts or publishing deals or the industry side of video games is something that is hard to tabulate and really understand in a tangible way, because for a lot of us, we're not really a part of that. But there has to be another way. There has to be a way to connect and build without risking segments of the population dying. I, for one, hope truly that this is the cancellation of E3 permanently, because I really do think that we as an industry deserve more. We're at the precipice of where we can get more, and I hope that others agree.